I mean, I think they, you know what I think they like about it? That it's not Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
'Cause
that
it's new,
becomes,
it's different.
and I think that becomes the most, to me, if you want to talk about like high level, like what's the most interesting thing that's going on, like with social network sites, not all the other amazing stuff that's going on, like mobile, which is the platform.
The parents aren't on.
Like my
Of
grandfather's on Facebook now, and I mean I'm
Of course,
old enough
that's,
to where
well, that's the
I
answer.
Facebook him, but
Well, that's
if
what I
was-
meant by that statement.
When when my parents got on
Yeah.
Facebook, I was like,
It's bridges, it's called Bridges and Tunnels
but I
in
don't
New
care
York
anymore.
City.
But when you're younger,
In New York,
you're
when
younger,
people
you
from New
don't-
Jersey and Connecticut
parents
start going
see.
to the same club, you're out.
Right.
Like that's a big, like
Yeah.
that's a big New York thing. You know?
Yeah, probably
I'm a
that's
Jersey
the
boy,
New
so I
York
hate that
shit.
thing, but that's what it's called. It's called Bridges and Tunnels, and that's the term I always use in our office and with my people. I think that what I want to know is, do they go into Tumblr now when they're 14 and 15, and then do they ever make it to Facebook? Because God forbid they don't. If that funnel dies for Facebook, then
Well,
it
I
starts
guess
becoming.
that's why Mark wants to have people on Facebook that are 13. You know, he just made that big statement
Yep.
that
He's
he
paying
doesn't
attention.
like those restrictions, and he really thinks that kids should be allowed to be there at age 13.
I know Zucks pretty well. I guarantee that's what it is. I know Zucks because I made a video in 2007 that Facebook should pay attention to Twitter, and that's why he wanted to talk to me, and that's why we got to know each other. He pays attention. I know for fact he's worried about Tumblr at some level, because that's just the way he's wired. He may not really worry, but he definitely knows what's going on, and I didn't hear that statement, but that if, I would tell you that if I saw
I'll
that statement,
forward you
please,
he did
if
an
I,
interview.
if
Yeah.
I
About
saw,
terms of service.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's
yeah.
what she means.
And
If I saw that,
Yeah.
if I was watching that, that would have been the first
Yeah,
thing I
and he
thought, oh
actually
shit,
did
he's
a
worried about
second
Tumblr.
statement because his first one was very much about, well, you know, we should just allow 13-year-olds, and it was almost like he's already somehow doing it. And then he sort of backtracked a
Well,
little
he
bit
has 9-year-olds
today.
lying that they're 14.
And basically said, well, what I meant is that the legal ramifications
Sure.
around this need to be changed so that we can officially allow 13-year-olds to, you know, come and play on
I spoke
Facebook.
at a career day today for 7th graders about social media, and I said, so, you know, what do y'all know about social media? They all, you know, Facebook, and so, and
And
all of
7th
them,
grade is what,
I
11?
think
13.
12, 13,
12, 13.
and they all, except for like 2 kids, had Facebook, and like 3 or 4 had Twitter, but, so they were all on Facebook, so they're
Facebook's
already,
the play.
they're already there. They're just probably lying about their age.
I have kind of explained that. Do you think maybe it could like move into like a progression type situation, like we do in life, where Tumblr could maybe be where they spend their time
Yes, I
at
do.
that age bracket, and then they move into Facebook as they get married and have children and want to share
There's
their
people that are doing that now,
So-
that, you know, they looked at LinkedIn as where they go when they got to
Right.
25. I mean, I think it's naturally happening at some
Yeah,
level.
that's
What I think you're bringing up that could be really interesting is as this stuff really matures, you know, can somebody own it? I remember 2 years ago, I almost pivoted VaynerMedia when we were only 6 people because I was scratching to do a startup. And my concept was to start a social network around the day you got your driver's license. I was gonna try to make a deal with every state that like somehow your driver's license number could be put into a site, and that like my thought on that was, and then like the first 3 places you went to would be like taken care of, right? So like the day you get your license, you put in your driver's license number, and then like right there it'd be like go to Starbucks for a free coffee to congratulate you, go to Mickey D's, this and that. And I thought the business model was interesting because I knew the brands would want it to be the first place they'd go, the first day they'd drive. And I also liked the idea that I was going to be able to get people at a very young age into the system, and then the concept was going to be how long can I keep them and this and the other thing. Thought it was kind of neat. Take it if you want it.
Are the kids we were talking about earlier, they're not really kids, 18-year-olds or whatever, are they interacting with brands on Facebook a lot, or even people on Tumblr? How are they envisioning sort of brand interaction on social networks?
The only thing I see, well, Facebook was smart to introduce the like button because no one was adding interest after they made their Facebook profile 5 years ago. They introduced the like thing, and now everyone's clicking like on.
But what does that mean? It means nothing, really. There's no conversation, there's no interaction, that's just another way for them, the
Or is
brand to
there?
broadcast and
Sure.
talk to them, it's like an email list.
No, it depends if the brand knows what they're doing. 'Cause
Right.
This is what I
If
do
it's on
for a
their
living,
newsfeed,
right?
they might
I
interact.
mean, we don't do that, but it means a whole lot to every brand and every business I work with, right? It
Because
depends.
they're playing numbers games, so it's like at what point do they wise up and start to say, you know what, it matters about the content and the conversation and, you know, what the value of them actually doing something actionable, not just saying I like
They all
you.
wise up at different times. It's like everything else, right? How many, you know, there's so much lack of, like, there's always wrong you know, going on, especially when something's new. You know, I remember I was buying the word wine for 5 cents on Google. That's how I built Wine Library. And my competitors thought I was stupid. And my dad even was like, how do I know that, like, our competitors aren't clicking the Google ads? We're paying $20 a day. That might be our competitors just making us pay $20 a day. I'm like, Dad, yeah, that could be, but like, I'm like, I don't think our competitors even know what Google is. You know, so I think the interesting thing is that they're gonna figure it out. I mean, you know, we have 30 brands we manage, and none of them broadcast. We don't look at any, you know why? Because I walk in and go, how's your email service doing? And they're like, shit. I'm like, okay, because here's what happened. 7, 8, 9 years ago, when email was fairly new and we all loved email, you pushed it out and it worked, right? We were opening our email, we were clicking our, and you could talk to the open rates. I don't know if that's something you would know.
Yeah, we're blocking all the stuff that the talk guys are saying.
Yeah, I mean, you knows this way better. I know this because it's how I built Wine Library. I mean, my email service used to, I know what the open rates were, I know what the click-through rates were, they were incredible. And then we fucked it up. We emailed every day, everything was the next greatest wine of all time, and we continued to kill equity out of it, right? I'm sitting there saying, fuck, and we did a bad job telling our story. I was tasting 20,000 wines a year, right? And I was only offering 250, so I'm like, wow, look at this great curation. But that was because I didn't do a good enough job explaining to people that that's what was going on. They just looked at it as like, every day there's the boy that cries wolf, another wine deal, another wine deal.
Another email from the wine asshole.
What's that, bud?
Another email from the
Yeah,
wine asshole.
absolutely. And then what happens is what's happening right now to the deal of the day space, right? You don't just have one wine asshole. I was the only wine asshole in 97, 98, 99, and that's why we exploded. Once everybody got smart, understood how to use it better.
They tune out.
Right, once there was 40 wine assholes, everybody tuned out. That's what's going on with the deal of day sites now, with Groupon and all that. Now, you guys are signed up to like 12 services, and
I delete them all before.
and you delete them. You know, I'm going to say tonight in my keynote, it's one of my favorite lines, I got to use it. You know, we were pumped to buy $40 worth of sushi for 20 bucks 2 years ago. Now, somebody offers us $1 million home for 10 bucks. We're deleting it before we open it.
Well, they're not
You know?
personal, right?
Right.
My first Facebook deal was for a pole dancing class in Dallas.
Well, that was
Hey,
personal.
that one's
I know you're seeing.
Yeah, they see your credit card statement.
So what about personal brand equity, like if you're consumers? So my company, we're a sponsor here today. We just launched at South by, and what we do is we match consumers with the brands that they like
Okay.
to let brands be able to say, you know, we have these lists, but they're not doing shit for us. So maybe we can tell these people they can actually interact with the brand, and then they become the syndication point of the brand's content with their own personalized message out to their social networks. In
Your
other words,
biggest problem is going to be if you become the mommy blogger issue. So mommy bloggers are the biggest, dirtiest group in the world. I mean, they're ridiculous. What happened in the mommy blogger world, right? So what your biggest thing is people not taking advantage of it, right? You're gonna have to vet the people that you match up with in such a great way. Because people are gonna tune out those people.
Yes and no. So we have some things that are kind of set in place to keep it
As clean as possible.
as clean as possible, number one. And then number two, we are really having the brands interact with the people that have already said, we love your brand and we want to tell the world about it.
That's fine. I'm worried about when Sally loves Best Buy and she's all fucking in and she's thrilled. I'll talk to
Right.
you every day, Best Buy. When Sally becomes, you know, the Tupperware of the month club, she's
Right.
gonna lose all her friends.
Well, and we meter their ability to message, so it won't become noise. Number one, and then also the case studies on the stuff that we've already done since South by when we launched, and we're getting a 325% CTR per person, like on a return on investment for our customers, and they're getting a 21% intent to buy. So like we did something with Warner Music Group for the Black Keys album, and they got great returns. But to me, I think, and I want your opinion, the consumers themselves and the people that live in their world have a lot more value to each other in the relationship than just something that you're reading on a feed, right?
Sure, of course.
Here's something interesting about the whole thing where you were talking about the guys on Madison Avenue trying to recreate the ridiculousness of, hey, I gotta go viral. And Facebook is trying to reverse engineer, Tumblr and is worried about it. What is Tumblr worried about? And the reality is that all those guys are trying to they're trying to force out the next thing that the crowd is gonna find. And they're gonna try and create where the crowd is gonna go. The problem is that the crowd goes where it goes en masse, and it's very difficult to predict how that's going to occur. And yet, when it happens, everyone goes, "That was obvious." You know what I mean?
Everything's
Everyone
obvious
becomes an
when it's
expert
over.
instantly once it happens. And so, part of the problem is there's got to be a slight, subtle way to get in front of that, just slightly. But it usually just starts from some dude sitting in his dorm, whether he's 16 or 19 or 20, just says, hey, this is this is something that I think ought to happen. And all of a sudden, other folks go, you know what, that just makes sense. And then it kind of swirls from there, and it's just not, constructed by design. It's almost by accident.
But they all have the same theme. It's all because of the circle of influence. I mean, there are influencers that are driving the virality of anything that's successful, and that's kind of what I'm asking is how do you leverage
degree, right?
influence?
Because Jonah tried to map that. I mean, that's the first thing we all think, right?
Mm-hmm.
The first thing you think is, get 35 internet celebrities with 2 million followers, let them link it, and away you go. But it doesn't work that way. It really doesn't. And so, and we're talking about such a micro thing right now, like, the viral nature of like a video or a meme or something of that nature. It really, I don't think that's, not that it's not.
So what are then the adoption patterns like in Asheville? Because in some way you guys have, a similar scenario. I mean, the use is different, but it still is all about how are people going to adopt what we offer them, and
yeah, I mean, it's enormously challenging to build a social service. We're growing fairly rapidly, but when you build for the modern user, the smartphone user, you're building for Android, you're building for the iPhone, you're building for your website. BlackBerry's next. That's like four different products, 4 different companies in a sense, 4 different code bases, 4 different skill sets for engineers. So it's kind of like running 4 different engineering teams at the same time. And so the thing that's amazing about it is the amount of time that people, I talk a lot about this in public, a lot of time, the amount of time that people are spending on these high-speed computers that we're all carrying in our pockets. I mean, think about how many times human beings look at these things every day.
We don't leave home without it.
But the average person probably looks at it between 50 and 100 times a day.
It's the first thing you look at when you wake up, right?
Better than that. How many of you guys are never ever at any point further than arm's reach from your phone, including when you sleep? Raise your hand.
I had a nightmare last night that I couldn't hear without my cell phone.
I think one of the biggest.
I mean, think about that.
One of the biggest financial opportunities.
It's the robot. I'm sorry.
It's the modern day gold rush. I spend, I'm an investor in 35 different companies. At least half of them are targeted at mobile advertising, mobile games, you name it. And the addiction level that is Americans are addicted to this thing in ways that are hard to explain. I don't see any amount of abating anytime soon. There's no reason for it to. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And so the job of people like me going forward, and people like you if you represent clients, is to figure out how to harness that addiction. How do you garner the attention
Wait
of
till
the
we
user?
start paying with it.
By the way, that affects
happening
people that build apps, right? So I'm a builder of apps. If you're a marketer, it's different challenge, but it's you're still fighting that same attention span and addiction problem. And it's an incredible opportunity. It's also an incredible challenge.
Because of fragmentation, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, fragmentation is a huge problem for Android especially, and for BlackBerry. But you have, think about it. You have a small screen. You don't have a lot of real estate like you have on the web. But the amount of time people are spending on this device versus the web is going literally straight up. And how do you get the user interface designed right, which is the hardest thing in the world, the user interface, right? So it's the melding of this cadence and rhythm you're trying to build with people with user interface design. I'm actually looking at buying a piece of a company in Toronto that does nothing but specialize in interface design for mobile devices, and they go to big companies and they build their apps for them, and they do agile, iterative testing to see how human beings on a psychological level are affected by these interfaces. That's the wave of the future, man. That is incredibly difficult, and the people that are good at it do not grow on trees, and generally cannot be educated to become one. It's either you can either paint a great painting, or you can't. You either can design a great interface.